that one on. Okay. So, what we're doing today is going to be very informal, just a conversation. We treasure so much here at Germantown Presbyterian the memories, the knowledge base that you are for us. And so I just want to ask you a few questions and just hear what you want to share with us. Okay. So let's begin just by noting that today is November
5th.
Thank you. November the 5th, 2019. And we are here at Germantown Presbyterian Church in Germantown, Tennessee, and that we are doing this interview with Lalla Mellor. And so tell us, Lalla, what your full name is.
My full name is Lalla Bright Brown Mellor.
Okay.
I was named for a great aunt and her sister, Lalla and Brighty. And my maiden name was Brown, and I married Ernest Mellor. So that's my name.
That's all those names.
Yeah.
And so you were born where and when?
I was born in St. George, South Carolina,
Okay.
a little town about 45 minutes or an hour west of Charleston.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was a great place to grow up. And I had an older sister 3 years and a brother a year and a half older.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a baby girl. That's why they call me sis or sister.
Mm-hmm.
Except in Lower South Carolina, they call you sister. Not sister,
Mm-hmm.
but sister.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And when did you come to Germantown Presbyterian Church, and for what brought you here?
Ernest and I were missionaries to Brazil for 5 years, and we were at Mission Haven in Richmond, right there by Union Seminary,
Mm-hmm.
for a year. And so Ernest was looking for a church because we didn't want to send our children 1,000 miles away to a school, because I had taught them up through 4th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I couldn't go in much higher. And anyway, a friend of his was at Second Presbyterian Church in Memphis,
Mm-hmm.
and his aunt and uncle lived here. And he was asked to speak at a family night supper. And after the supper, Dr. Posey, the pharmacist, came up. He was head of the search committee. He came up to Ernest and said, "We like what you said and the way you said it. Why don't you come and be our preacher? We'll give you $2,700 a year." And it stretched for a family of 6, because I had 4 children at that time.
Goodness gracious. What year was that, Lalla?
This was 1963.
Okay.
And I can tell how many years we've been here, because Ernie was a baby when we came. So we've been here I've been here 56 years.
Mm-mm.
And Dr. and Mrs. Warren, Dr. Warren had been here for years, and he was really a pastor to this town. The town only had 1,300 people in it.
Mm-hmm.
Probably had that many horses too, I'm not sure. It's a real horsey place. And they lived down the street from us, and they were so dear. He baptized Ernie, and I really appreciated that so much.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we drove up to the place, and I thought, well, I didn't realize this was such a small town, but I grew up in one a lot smaller, and because it's so close to Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
And so Ernest started his ministry here, and that's how we came.
Thank you. And so you have 4 children. Tell me who they are, your children and grandchildren.
My oldest daughter is Lalla, named for me. They wouldn't let me out of the hospital until I named her.
Mm-hmm.
She was supposed to be a junior for her daddy. But she's the oldest. She lives in Germantown. And Ann, my second daughter, is a Presbyterian minister in Brownsville, Tennessee. And my third daughter, Elizabeth, and her husband have retired over to Greer's Ferry in Arkansas. And Ernie, my son, lives in Memphis, and he's a caterer.
Okay.
And Lalla Mellor, a chef. And there's a lot of cooking in our family.
It sounds like there's a lot of cooking.
Except I retired because I did so much myself early on. And I said, when I quit, I quit.
Yeah.
I can heat things up, but I don't cook much.
And grandchildren?
I have one grandchild, Ernie's child,
Okay.
Mary Glenn Mellor. She's
Okay.
named for her maternal grandmother and granddaddy, Mary Glenn Neal. And she is working in Los Angeles right now.
Okay. And what's her age?
She's 28.
Okay.
Just one, but she makes up for a lot.
There you go.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit, if you would, about your early memories of this town. You said 1,300 people, and this church. And how did those two come together? Like, where was the intersection between the town of Germantown and the church of Germantown Presbyterian?
The town of Germantown was really a sort of like one great big community. The Methodist church is very close and had a wonderful friendly minister, and the Baptist minister also, and Episcopal. And anything was going on, the whole community gathered. One of the big deals was the Germantown Charity Horse Show, which was on the week that we arrived. And it's just right, down the street from Germantown Presbyterian Church. And somebody invited us to sit in their box. And I remember we carried Ernie in one of those little canvas bed things we had back in those days. And I think it rained on us. And then as the kids grew in the church, our children were always good little ministers. They were friendly, and they'd make friends, and they'd bring them to church, whether they were Episcopalian or Baptist or Methodist or whoever. And that's the way we got started. And then there was the Germantown Festival every September, and there's just a lot going on. And we lived close enough to hear the loudspeaker from the horse show arena, so we knew when there were extra horse shows going on, besides the big one. In fact, one year the lady who had been playing the organ for the horse show, because she knew all the gaits of the horses and would play the music accordingly, she had accepted a bigger deal in St. Louis, and so they needed an organist for the horse show. Well, guess who they got? Ernest Mellor. And he didn't know the front end from the back end of a horse, I don't think. But we had lots of good friends, and the people in the church were very much involved, Bobby Lanier in particular. And but they would stand up by the organ, and with the different gaits of the horses, they would put music in front of him, and he'd go to town with it.
Well, goodness, so he was an organist?
As well as a piano.
Wow.
And as the kids grew up, in the church, they worked at the horse show. They would put up the things the horses jump over and all that sort of thing. So it was a lot of fun for the teenagers, because the girls would go down there to see the boys, and the boys would go, they'd work, and then they'd go sit with the girls when they weren't working. So that was fun. And you just saw everybody at the horse show.
It was the place to go and see people. Yeah. So
Still is.
some of those people that you remember that were early in your ministry here at GPC, you mentioned Bobby Lanier. Who else comes to mind when you think about the people in the community and in the church?
Yeah. Bobby in particular, because he was such a friend to everybody. The whole town depended on him. If you wanted to find out something you needed, call Bobby. If you wanted to get something worked out that was a little fuzzy, you call Bobby, and he was very diplomatic, and he could do that. For instance, our kids love to play kickball, the teenagers. And when we moved from next door to the church, down the street just a short way, when they built a new manse, we had a light put in the backyard so the kids could play past sundown. Well, the next door neighbors called the light, gas, and water and told them to come take it out. And Bobby said, I think it would be a good idea if you did. The kids can do okay without that much light. You've got that porch and they can see. So he would let you know the best thing to do.
He was a diplomat, it sounds like.
Very much so. Very much so.
Okay.
And then Jamie Maddox, who was married to Dr. Warren's oldest daughter, he had a laundry at first. Later went to real estate, but he had a laundry. And everybody said, Jamie knows what every woman's house coat looks like, because he would pick up and deliver at your front door, which was awfully nice. And he was a very friendly, fine man, and had children. Somewhere along the line, Ernest, he was doing a lot of visitation down at the hospitals and the funeral homes, and they were all way down into Memphis, right past the Methodist Memorial Hospital that's downtown on Union. And so he said, I'm going to get a little Volkswagen, but I want a Carmen Ghia convertible. So he got this little green Carmen Ghia convertible with a white top. Well, the kids loved it. The teenagers would tease him. The boys would get that car and put it in gear and push it around town and hide it from him. And he would let them use it for dates and things like that. And he got tired of going all the way down there for a funeral or something, and then for the funeral parlor limousine to bring him out for the funeral, and then back down there to get his car. So he started driving his little green Carmen Ghia in the funeral procession. And one fine man in the church, Bill Watkins, said, Ernest, you just need to put rest in peace sign on the back of this. So everybody had sort of a light spirit. And the church was very friendly. You've always got people that are dissatisfied about something or other. But by and large, it was kind of family-like, to tell you the truth. And we just loved it.
And what about women in the church?
That was has been a big part for me since I've been here, to be in a circle for Bible study and to go to the monthly Presbyterian women meetings. And they were active way back then. And we met in people's homes. And you sort of get to know people better when you're in their homes.
Right.
And I loved having it at my house, and most people did. And it was a wonderful way to get to know and love people and to grow in our faith together. That was the real wonderful benefit of all that.
And I know in the Southern Church it was Women of the Church, and that was already active before you came, and then continued to be active for all those years afterwards, and now it's Presbyterian Women. Yeah. So who were some of those key women for you? Can you remember back when you first came?
There was a wonderful lady in our church, Mrs. Frankie Callis. And in fact, when they first allowed women to be elders, she was our first lady elder in the church. And when we first moved here, she wanted to take Ernest to visit all the little towns around in the presbytery, so he'd get the lay of the land and all, which is a real sweet thing for her to do. So she put Ernie and me on the back seat and Ernest in the front, and I remember how much fun it was because we stopped at Bozo's barbecue on the way around on our travels. And she was she was just a wonderful Christian lady that was an inspiration to many of us.
Mm-hmm.
And then in my age group, Diana Watkins was always a wonderful person for me.
Mm-hmm.
She and I kind of had the same sense of humor, so we became real good friends. We didn't have to be together a whole lot, but we always were glad to see each other. And
Right.
we were pregnant at the same time.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And well, I already had the baby, and then she had Kayla the next year.
Mm-hmm.
And
What was your age when you came?
I think I was, 28. I was about 32.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's right. I think.
And Reverend Mellor, what was his age when y'all came? Do you remember?
He's about 6 weeks younger than I am.
Okay.
So he probably was 31.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he loved the work. And he was, involved in whatever he could in the community.
Yeah.
And the church was glad about that.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a nice little choir. It wasn't very large, but Dr. Posey, the pharmacist, that told Ernest to come be our preacher, he was the music director.
Okay.
And Dr. Warren's youngest daughter, Martha Nell Mays, married to Boyd Mays,
Mm-hmm.
she was the organist.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times on Sundays, she would play the organ and Ernest would play the piano. And
Mm-hmm.
it was real good for singing.
So he would play the piano and then preach
Or preach and play the piano.
at the
whichever
same
it was.
time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so he was the minister here from 63
To
until
73.
to 73, so a decade.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of people had confidence in him,
Mm-hmm.
and they would come to see him for counseling.
Mm-hmm.
And he finally had to tell people, please park on the backside of the church, because there's somebody that would say, what was so-and-so doing over there talking to you about? So he said, put your car in the back and come in that door.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
he finally decided he really felt called to do pastoral counseling
Okay.
full-time.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when we were here until 73, and then opened the Pastoral Counseling Center.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And he preached every weekend that summer. All the preachers were on vacation, so he filled pulpits, which he loved to
Mhm.
do. So
And then he did pastoral counseling for a number of years as well.
yes, for about 20-some.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
I was the office manager secretary.
So just opened an office then that was separate from the church.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
and he had resigned from the church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was hard to leave. And we left, you really are supposed to stay away a while, and
Mhm.
for him to call the new minister and
Right.
to let him get very much oriented.
Mm-hmm.
So when we felt like Denton was ready for us to come back, we did. But Ernest wasn't here much.
Mm-hmm.
I went to Balmoral Presbyterian Church because it was close by
Okay.
for Sunday school. They let me teach Sunday school and teach parenting classes and
Mhm.
things like that. So
Mhm.
I enjoyed being over there too.
Yeah. And did you stay over there for several years?
Yeah, about 2 years.
Oh, just
probably.
2. Okay.
Not a whole lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would go with Ernest a lot on his preaching, different places, out of town in particular.
Okay.
I was usually his navigator driver. So that worked out.
Where he might have still been working on his sermon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or he might be getting lost somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Were there, so when you were here, then women of the church, and did you teach Sunday school here as well?
It's interesting because we had a small room behind the chapel. Our chapel now was the church.
Right, right.
And behind the sanctuary, there was some rooms, Sunday school rooms found there.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a small room that had a baby bed, a crib in it. And they had 2 or 3 little toddlers and maybe a baby, and a nice black lady or somebody kind of taking care of them. Well, I realized that Ernie would start fussing every time I started putting his Sunday clothes on. And so so I thought, well, I'll check this out. And so that was that little crowded place. So I thought, well, I can't ask somebody to do for me what I'm not willing to do for myself. So I started doing up to 4 years old, I think. And we had a group of wonderful little boys in there, and they loved to fight. That's just their thing. That's how they played.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And if a little toddler was sitting down playing with the ball, they'd love to kind of bump them down. And I remember one time when Diana's youngest son came in, and he had his fist up, ready to go. But I went to church in Richmond, Virginia, when we were there that year, and one of the ladies who was the Christian education person for that church,
Mm-hmm.
she had the parents stay with the small children during the church hour. You know, they had the Sunday school, and they went to the adult Sunday school class, but they would take turns doing that. So I thought, well, why don't we try that?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I got a very athletic daddy in there one time, and he had a football, and they were playing around, and the lady who was teaching the class next to mine said, Lalla, we can't have this, it's just too rowdy. So we decided we better not do that. The daddies just got too excited playing with all those kids.
Yeah, you needed a new plan.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
so we worked something else out, and it worked.
So tell us a little bit about your own faith journey, your upbringing in your family. What was that like for you? Your own faith journey in your family.
I don't remember ever not being aware of God.
Yeah. Yeah.
And believing that he loved me. I had a wonderful daddy, so I didn't have that, that way some people feel like the angry God's after you or something. Mother was a member of the Methodist Church, and Daddy came to town as a banker. And he when they got married, he didn't join the Methodist Church. His father was a Baptist minister, but he was on the board of trustees and very active in the Methodist Church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we were there every time the doors opened, practically, on Wednesday nights, and loved the youth groups and all. And I loved going to summer camps. They had a co-ed camp in our area, and it was called Camp Forest, and the different cabins had names of trees.
Mm-hmm.
And so we just loved doing that. And I remember we had a missionary from China, and he looked kind of like what I remember, like Colonel Sanders, had on a white suit and all. And I just followed that poor little man all around the camp, because I was just so fascinated by what he said.
Mm.
And they would do things like push a boat out into the lake and have a lighted cross on it. Mm-hmm. And we learned to sing all these wonderful songs, mm-hmm. like Jesus, I'm able, and I'm thine, O Lord. And I wake up in the middle of the night sometimes with those things going through my head. And it's a wonderful way to spend the awake times in the night time.
It is. It is.
And then I graduated from high school when I was 16. Mm-hmm. My birthday's in December, and they let me start early that year. And then we didn't have but 11 grades. The next year they were going to put the 12th one in. So I graduated from high school the summer that World War II ended. The Japanese had surrendered in August, I think. And I went off to Converse College in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And While I was there, I couldn't believe it, but I was tapped to be in this special association called the Order of the Gavel. It was some leaders of the school, and they elected me president of that. And one day the dean called me in, and she said, everybody called me sis or sister. She said, "Sister, I want to ask you to do a very special thing. You can't be president of two things, but I'd like for you to resign the gavel, not gavel, but resign the presidency of gavel, and run for the president of the Christian Association." And I thought, my goodness, they had somebody good running. Anyway, I did it, and I ended up president of the Christian Association. And I remember we had this wonderful Presbyterian minister there. I don't remember where he was from, somewhere up east. But his name was Russell Strout. And we thought about it, Russell Sprout, something like that. But he was a real inspiration to me. And I had several opportunities to talk with him by myself, and it just meant a lot to me. And the Presbyterian church was right down the street, so I walked down there with my friends to church every Sunday. So I had gotten, because my hometown didn't have a Presbyterian church. The Presbyterians were all in the Methodist church. So,
Oh, wow. Okay.
so that was my introduction to the Presbyterian church.
Stand by. I don't know why this keeps clicking off, but you can hear it when it doesn't. It might be set on a timer that we're not aware of. What is one absolute story or fact or history about Germantown Presbyterian Church that you want everyone to know?
I still go back to the fact that the community of the believers,
Yeah.
it just was, it was a family like, and family camp was wonderful. We just, everybody had a good time. When we went to Nakomi back in those days, we didn't have, Pinecrest was being built when we came. And you just felt the Spirit of God working through it, because it was a happy time. And like I say, you're always going to have people that are unhappy about this, that, and the other, but you know, you just spend as little time as possible stomping out brush fires, I call it. Because I used to say if we didn't have to stomp out so many brush fires, we could get on with the work of the Lord. But that was the main thing.
Just a real spirit of unity.
And a spirit of adventure. We were involved with a group called Faith at Work, which was a lay movement. And the head of it was Bruce Larson, a Presbyterian minister, and his office was in New York. And a friend of Ernest had been in California, and he said, "I want to tell you about these groups they've got there, these Bible groups. You need to get on the plane and go to this Faith at Work thing in New York." And Ernest thought, "Hey, I got plenty of money. I can just run off to New York." But he ended up doing that. And it was amazing how the people accepted. We would bring people in from everywhere. And Ernest was always thinking out of the box. And so he sent a notice to Bruce Larson in New York that we were going to have not a Germantown Presbyterian Church weekend. We were going to have a Mid-South weekend. Well, we started getting notes from people in Alabama and Mississippi and Kentucky and other places registering for this Mid-South Faith at Work thing. Well, the church they just got into it. And we knew that we were doing some building here, and we were having church down at the schoolhouse. Wow. So we had to get the cooks at the school to see if we could get them to cook for us that weekend. and we had people sign up to register folks and to take them around, and it was just a good way that we all worked together.
Mm-hmm.
And we had these inspirational speakers, and they even had us in the newspaper, and then there were some wonderful mission conferences in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And Ernest would say, Lalla and I are going to this, and we want you to go with us. It wasn't, you really ought to go to this. Come go with us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And people would go with us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so that we got way out of the box sometimes. But it was infusing wonderful inspiration in the church.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I used to say Ernest's two good qualities were his enthusiasm and his inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that goes a long way.
Mm-hmm. It really does.
Yeah.
It really does. Is there any other story or fact, historical fact, that you want to make sure that we get down on film today?
Well, we had people like George Buttrick,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember Ernest invited him to come to our church, and he knew we couldn't pay for him for the whole 3 or 4 days we wanted him, but he went over to Rhodes College, which was Southwestern of Memphis at the time, and said, we have Dr. George Buttrick, who's retired from his church in New York, and he's coming to Germantown, and would you like to have him in the daytime to speak with your students, or however you would like to use him, and you have the guest rooms here at the college. He could stay there, and so that worked out, and that was wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
He told the most wonderful stories. He'd tell his little old lady stories were great. He said that they would come out of church and say, "Oh, Dr. Buttrick, all of your sermons mean so much. Each one's better than the next," or something like that. And I just lived on your sermons ever since my husband lost his mind. And of course, he was great. And an Episcopal man in town knew about him and came to all his speaking at Germantown.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
He preached, I think, 3 or 4 nights. And he said, "Where's Mrs. Buttrick?" "Well, she's gone to Chicago to be with family." "Well, she needs to be here." So he paid for Mrs. Buttrick to come, and that perked him up considerably.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just a great, inspiring time.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds like it was a great event for this church as well. Yeah, yeah.
And we had some professors from Columbia Seminary who had written some of the books we used in Sunday school to come, and that was always a joy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And people liked Ernest's preaching, so that worked out.
That worked out. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Well, Lalla, I thank you so much for taking this time, and I guess I should say that that I'm Reverend Susan Carter Wiggins, and I have enjoyed very much interviewing you this afternoon. And so we just thank you so much for your graciousness and for your ministry here at Germantown Presbyterian Church. So thank you so much for your willingness to share your stories and your time here at GPC with all of us.
Oh, thank you. God gave me a real love for people, and that's been a joy for me my whole life.
Amen. That's a good note. Thank you so much.
You're more than welcome.